Let's talk about it now. A couple of attorneys join us, and we're very pleased they don't have the meter running and charge us legal fees.
Right.
Former federal prosecutor Bruce Reinhart from Newsmax, New York, and also Skyping in attorney Adam Thompson from Louisville, Kentucky. Bruce, to you first, what do you think will come out of this Justice Department investigation?
Nothing legally. I think the facts are what they are, and if this grand jury heard all the evidence and heard from all the witnesses and found that there was no probable cause, I don't imagine that the federal government's going to uncover any new evidence. So legally, nothing's going to happen. I think this is just a play to try to make the public feel better about the process, but at the end, the Justice Department is probably going to say there's no charges here, and we're just going to recycle the same problem we have right now.
Short answer, I guess, political theater. Adam, do you share that assessment?
Pretty much. I think the federal prosecutors aren't going to jump in and add to the fire that's already out there. If the grand jury already heard the facts, they're going to let it lie where it lies. But I really think this case is so much different than the previous cases. This isn't like the Trayvon Martin case. This isn't like even the Michael Brown case. In this case, you really have a video that captured everything that happened. So it's so prevalent in everyone's mind that, hey, look, what the police did in this case is just egregious. There was no reason for it. It seems to be clear excessive force. There was no need to use a chokehold that was used, and it resulted in a person's death. When it's so clear in that manner, the emotions are even sparked even higher. And that might really push a Fed investigation to go. But as the other gentleman said, I don't think it's going to happen. They'll let it lie. But there'll certainly be a civil lawsuit. And just like in the O.J. Simpson case, I think 1,000% the family will prevail. It won't even get the trial. It'll settle out of court.
Bruce, as Adam just mentioned, we saw the video. Clearly, the officer was using an illegal move. The autopsy shows that that's what caused Garner's death. Are you surprised at all by the decision? And do you think that a civil lawsuit will happen? And if so, do you think the family will win it?
I think there will be a civil lawsuit. Whether the family will win it may turn on whether there's some sort of an immunity here for the officer. So I can't really opine on that. I think in terms of what occurred here, the reality is that the American public is seeing live and in person what happens every day on our streets, and it's not always pretty. And the police officers are in a very difficult situation in these cases, and they're trying to do the best they can, and I think what the grand jury found is the officer acted in good faith. He may have been completely wrong, but he was trying the best he could. It happens every day, it's unfortunate, but what's happened here that's different is we're seeing it, and it's not pretty, and that's why people are protesting, because it shouldn't be happening, but it is.
Bruce, you mentioned people seeing it, and that leads into the whole notion of having body cameras on police officers. The president wants to make $75 million available for that. Bruce, in your mind, is it a good idea to put body cameras on every cop?
I think if we can do it effectively, yes, I think it is. We've seen in a lot of jurisdictions where they now have cameras in all the police cars, and they're capturing every police traffic stop, DUI arrests, and things like that, and it's very effective. It's not just effective for protecting people who are being approached by the police, but it's also very valuable for prosecutors. You have great evidence when you go to court. You know exactly what the person did, exactly what the person said. The jury doesn't have to rely on what the officer is saying happened. The jury can see it. So I'm all in favor of those kind of cameras. If we can make it work, I think it's a great addition to the whole criminal justice system.
Adam, we want to get your response on that, though. I mean, we're talking about video cameras on police officers' vests, but clearly we just saw in the Garner case, there were tons of people capturing that video using their cell phones. So a lot of people are saying, what difference will it make?
Well, you got two problems here. First, I think that body cams are a great idea. I'll tell you why. The counties, they've already been tested out. Some in California, for example, I think Reinhart, California did it. There's already been a drop in 60% of excessive force or use of force claims against police officers. And there's even been a drop of around 80 or 88% of civilian complaints against police officers. So it shows when people know they're being monitored and everything's being recorded, every word, every movement, every action, it makes people behave and act better. That's a huge plus, and that's what we want. So it's going to cut back on all these kind of incidents taking place. But still, it doesn't eliminate racism. It doesn't get that element out.
And it doesn't prevent the fact that time is in our way. We're going to bring you both back, Adam Thompson and Bruce Reinhart. You come back too here on America's Forum. let's continue our conversation with a pair of attorneys. From Louisville, Kentucky, Adam Thompson joins us via Skype, and from Newsmax New York, it's Bruce Reinhart. Adam, you were making a point before the break. We want you to finish that, and perhaps you have a reaction to the widow of Eric Garner and her comments.
Yeah, sure. Just the two problems that I started to allude to was you have the first is you have no control how the prosecution is going to present the case. They can give as little or as much evidence as they want, and they could examine the evidence as detailed as they want. For example, they could either cross-examine or not cross-examine the defendants if they choose to testify. And in this case, the police officer did testify. It's my understanding he wasn't cross-examined, which is very unusual. They always cross-examine a defendant if they testify. The second problem that you have in these cases is that well, I'm losing my.
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, let me. On that point, Adam.
Racism out of the jury. You never know how a jury's going to react.
Right.
If it's predominantly white or black, it could sway one way or the other.
And also the role of a grand jury obviously differs from a petit jury, and that's why we want to bring in Bruce Reinhart again. Bruce, you're a former federal prosecutor. Your approach when working with a grand jury at the federal level?
It's the same approach that they would have taken in this case. You're trying to just find out what happened. The grand jury is an investigative body, and in this case they heard from dozens of witnesses, they reviewed all the evidence, and as Mr. Tompkins points out, the officer actually testified. So the grand jurors had a chance to listen to him, to observe his credibility, and to hear what he had to say and decide whether he was telling the truth or not. In a case like this, as the prosecutor and the grand jury, there's only one question. You know what happened. The question is, why did it happen, and did the officer do it on purpose? And more importantly, can you prove beyond a reasonable doubt to a regular jury that the officer did it on purpose? And what the grand jury here found, that they couldn't even prove probable cause that the officer did it on purpose. So if that's the case, that's the right finding by the grand jury.
Do you think the department, though, could be in trouble and face a lawsuit?
Absolutely. I think that when Mrs. Garner talks about justice, there's a lot of different ways to get justice in this world. And if the officer really didn't, in fact, commit a crime, that doesn't mean he did everything right. And if he did something wrong, they can sue the department, and the officer can be disciplined. They can recover money for what the officer did. The officer might be fired. So there's a lot of other ways to right this situation, even if it's not by someone else going to jail.
About a minute left. I'd like to get your reaction to something else going on, and that's the mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, the way he has reacted to this case. It seems there's going to be a real dispute now between the cops union and City Hall. Can that be reconciled so that the police can maintain order? Adam, very quickly, 20 seconds to you and then to Bruce.
Very hard situation, but I think the mayor is trying to appease the public at this point. But there are questions to be asked, so he's asking the right questions. The police can and should do better.
Well, let me turn to our former federal prosecutor. The whole political angle on this, Bruce, does it set up a situation that really causes problems now for the police in maintaining order?
I don't think it causes problem for them in maintaining order. People want to be safe. They want the police to do the dirty work that's required to keep them safe, and sometimes it's just not pretty. But I think it is a political problem for the mayor because the police union is very powerful. He's got his other constituency, and there's going to be a tug of war for a while in New York politics over this.
Yep, politics always intervenes in every avenue of public policy, including what happens in the courts. Former federal prosecutor Bruce Reinhart coming to us from New York, and our friend Adam Thompson, attorney at law from Louisville, Kentucky. Gentlemen, to you both, we thank you very much for what you had to say. There is more straight ahead on this Friday edition of America's Forum. Please stay with us here on Newsmax TV.